gamers getting sick of gritty third-person shooters that have dull art styles, the world needed a new type of game to revitalize the industry from the stale choices of video games at the time. With the release of Super Meat Boy, the industry was rejuvenated, and the public finally took notice of small independently developed games, or indie games. With a much higher difficulty and fast-paced gameplay, Super Meat Boy evolved the way games would be made. Instead of pining for a job at a large game development company, people are now able to craft newer, more thought-provoking games that have touched the lives of many people to this day. To see how a game revitalized the stagnant industry and how a new style of game production came to fruition, let's take a look at Super Meat Boy's development history. Super Meat Boy was self-published, which was sort of unheard of at the time, by Edmund Macmillan and Tommy Refenes under the name Team Meat. Super Meat Boy was a successor to Macmillan's Flash game, Meat Boy. The original Meat Boy was made by the duo over 3 weeks and was uploaded to Newgrounds, a place where people could play and watch Flash games and animations. Meat Boy soon became one of the most popular games on the site, gaining around 8 million views. After the success of Meat Boy, both Microsoft and Nintendo loved the game, so they asked Macmillan to design another game similar to one of his past projects. Both companies wanted his game to release on their console download stores, the Wii's WiiWare and the Xbox 360's Xbox Live Arcade. Originally, Team Meat pitched the companies a sequel to one of Macmillan's past projects, Aether, but decided to move away from that idea and instead began working on a newer, more fleshed out and expanded version of Meat Boy. This game was going to be a nice fit for Nintendo's brand, as Team Meat wanted this game to be an homage to NES games of the past, like Super Mario Bros. Or Ghosts and Goblins. They wanted this game to be a tribute to Shigeru Miyamoto, who created the original Super Mario Bros. When development began in 2009, they both only met a few times together while working on the game. From opposite sides of the US, Macmillan worked on the level design while Refenes worked on the code. They worked through multiple concepts, moving through different ideas and using their families as guinea pigs and beta testers, asking for their feedback. Originally, the game would have both multiplayer co-op and competitive modes, but this was dropped along with the original 100 level estimate. Instead, they increased the level count to well over 200 unique levels, each posing a difficult challenge. They wanted to create a fluent style of gameplay. Instead of using a pre-built game engine like Flash, they created their own. They also removed a set number of lives before a game over, which has been staples of platformers of the past, instead opting for infinite lives and quick restarts for all the levels. The game was going to have a retro art style like past platformers, but would use modern platforming mechanics and difficulties. Once the game was finished, the file size was way too big for it to become WiiWare. So sadly, it never came to the Wii, although it did release on the two successor consoles, the Wii U and the Switch. It did, however, release successfully on Microsoft's Xbox 360 on October 20th, 2010. Sadly, it never came to Sony's 7th generation console, the PS3, but did, however, come to the PS4 and the PS Vita, as well as on the PC and Mac. Now, this game was a really hard platformer, so Team Meat decided to make it so you could instantly restart the level when you die, as well as giving you an infinite amount of lives. The story was simple. You, being Meat Boy, must save your girlfriend, Bandage Girl, from Dr. Fetus. Meat Boy has to run, jump, and slide down walls to save his girlfriend. Now, unlike past platformers with large levels, Super Meat Boy has 300 short levels with tight platforming. Think of this like a mix between Super Mario Bros. And Ghosts and Goblins. Now, the stages are split into chapters, with each level in the chapter allowing the player to skip it if they had a hard time with it. Although you still needed to complete a set number of levels to unlock the boss of each chapter. Macmillan wanted this game to be challenging without it being frustrating. Each level, if completed with an A+ rank, allows you to beat a harder version of the level. Not only that, but there are hidden levels that you can find when playing through the game. Some of these levels have retro art styles, with you controlling a Meat Boy or his companions as he moves through levels with typically 3 lives. Other times, you are a character from a variety of different indie games of the past as you beat the levels. You were also able to unlock different characters throughout the game by collecting the bandages scattered throughout each level. With each level being so expertly crafted, it was no wonder that this game kept getting high scores from every reviewer. People praised its hard difficulty and well-designed levels. The controls for the game were tight, so when you messed up, it was your fault. It never felt like you would die to a cheap trick or an inescapable death. All you needed to beat the level was just split-second reactions and time. Though some critics complained about how the game was based heavily on twitch reflexes and trial and error, with some people saying that casual video game players would have been too intimidated by this game. The critics also loved the crude yet retro art style, with many pointing to each level having a distinct feeling to it. With the release of Super Meat Boy came the rise of indie titles. These games soon competed with the AAA giants of the gaming industry. Indie games were now about creative puzzles and touching stories, which seemed absent in the gaming industry of the past, with gritty shooters and dark themes. The team commented about how they could fuel their game with their own creativity and not worry about the money of shareholders. This game pushed many other people to become indie developers when they saw the success Two Men had with their game. With the release of this game, indie games became commonplace on many consoles, as people could experience feelings and creative gameplay instead of another gritty first-person World War II shooter. After a decade in development, McMillen decided to leave Team Meat to make different games and IPs. The long-awaited sequel to Super Meat Boy, Super Meat Boy Forever, came out on December 23, 2020 for the PC and the Nintendo Switch, with other consoles receiving the game in early 2021. This game, instead of being a platformer, was an automatic runner, with Meat Boy running through each level. You can control how he jumps, kicks, and punches as enemies, which is another thing they added to the game. Meat Boy is now able to attack enemies instead of avoiding them, which adds more complexity into the game. Also, interestingly, the game's levels are auto-generated based on the player's skill. With McMillen leaving the team, he decided on making a few different games, specifically The Binding of Isaac, where he used a child's tears to fight back against enemies. Super Meat Boy paved the way for indie games to take over the gaming market. Low-budget yet high-quality games found new homes on consoles and PCs. If you look at most of the big-name indie games out there that came after Super Meat Boy, you can find many similarities between them, from their art styles to the difficulties and similar playstyles and even genres. Super Meat Boy was really a revolutionary game made by two people screwing around on a Flash website a decade ago. And because of that, we're now getting great games, from Shovel Knight to Cuphead to even The Binding of Isaac. This has been the history of Team Meat's Super Meat Boy. Thank you for watching.